first understand what is business communication and how could we define this. Business communication is the process of sharing information between people within and outside a company. Effective business communication is how employees and management interact to reach organizational goals. Its purpose is to improve organizational practices and reduce errors. The importance of business communication, also lies in presenting options or new business idea. Start with it is presenting ideas, explaining plans and proposals. You could also call it as business writings, right? Different modes of communication we'll discuss in short time. Executing decisions, you need business communication for that. Reaching to agreement, sending and fulfilling orders, successful selling and effective meetings would all are the key important stuff for which lies in the business communication. All organized activities in a company relies on the process of business communication. This could be anything from managerial communications to technical communications to vendors to anything and everything, it all for that particular organization when we call this as business communications. When we typically talk about types of communication, there are two basic types, right? Basic differences which we call in business communication, and those are like your internal communication, number one, and external communication, right? So these are something which comes under the vertical communication what we talk. When I say internal communication, all communications that has to do with internal matters and interactions between staff and employees in varied forms is called internal communication. And it serves as an excellent medium to address all concerns of employees, thereby enhancing goodwill, job satisfaction, productivity and safety aspects. It also serves to increase turnover and profits. Under internal communications, you have upward communication, you have downward communication, or you also call this as managerial communication, and lateral communication, which you could also call it as a technical communication. Let's understand each of these things, what comes under each one. When I say upward communication, this represents the information flow from lower down in the hierarchy to those in the higher positions, thus preventing the organization to experience a vacuum in terms of not only the proper receipts of information but also solutions to other problems that the company may face. Undoubtedly, communication is a two-sided sword, but for it to work effectively, information must originate in the bottom and move upward. The benefit of upward communication to the staff includes the exchange of ideas and informations, heightened staff enthusiasm, job satisfaction, and the provision of feedback. What actually happens on the ground level, right, needs to go up, which will help from the top to make strategies and then bring it down, right? Now that brings me to the downward communication, the second one which we're talking about. The flow of information and instructions from the top level of the organization to its lowest level, detailing the missions and policies, is normally referred as downward communication, right? The strategy which is thought of, how it needs to be executed, that needs to be sent downwards to every level in the entire chain to make the communication more effective. These may be in the form of specific instructions or guidelines to complete a full project or an individual task. However, you must start establishing the procedure only after the upward communication has been successfully instituted. This information flow can be used to pass on important matters and instructions, announces decisions, and promote mutual discussions, cooperations and morale, enhance efficiencies and obtain feedbacks, right? That's exactly how the downward communication works. When I say horizontal or a lateral communication, when people with the same rank in the organization communicate with each other and collaborate in search of a common goal, it is called as horizontal communications. You would have seen different, say for example, when I take managers at a particular level, managers from different departments sit together, work together to achieve a common goal in the organization, is how the horizontal or a lateral communication works. Assigned work is best completed when employees at the same level cooperate. This kind of communication helps solve problems by enhanced teamwork, boosting efficiency, completing tasks, and building goodwill. The second type which we were talking earlier is external communication. External communication refers to communication by companies, supervisors, with agencies outside the company, for example with customers and vendors. This kind of communication and useful interactions can lead to operational efficiencies, market credibility, goodwill, or corporate image, customer satisfaction, organizational goals leading to performance, increased sales volumes, followed by a strong profit showing. Right? When I talk about things like customer satisfaction, external communication plays a key role. Imagine any situation where communication needed. For example, you have placed an order for a particular product. Once you placed an order for the product, you quickly want to know what is the status. You always are in a position to figure out where exactly is my order, when am I getting my order, how am I getting my order, and you have a lot of things there. For achieving that customer satisfaction, it's important that this external communication happens where customer at each level is aware of where exactly is their order, how are they getting it, when are they getting it, and fixing different things in different companies. Like one of the organization which I was working, where we're so keen and focused on this level of external communication. Where an order is placed, we ensure we talk to the customer, we ask them the specific time when we can come and deliver, and this leads to a great level of customer satisfaction. Most of this external work is done by, say, marketing department, who targets markets in pursuit of large share of businesses, and purchase executives who are like always sourcing better quality of inputs at a lower price. Right, so you can sort all communications in this spectrum in 4 types of business communications. Number 1, getting and receiving instructions and assignments both upward and downward. This includes an effective delegation from one person to another. Most problems in business begin with unclear communications in this area. So it's very important for us to ensure communications are super clear. The second one is sharing and discussing information, including information sharing that goes on in meetings. When communication fails in this area, it causes tasks to be done improperly and or not at all done. The third one is giving feedback, corrections, and discipline to people who report to you, so that they can have the knowledge and the tools that they need to do their jobs better. Giving great actionable feedback is a key skill for anyone in the leadership position. Non-verbal communication and body language also play a role here. Problem solving and decision making meetings and discussions, right? These are the 4th type. These are considered among the most important discussions of any organization. This involves higher critical thinking and better communication technology, because what you are trying to set up here is solving the problems that are existing so that things can move on. Different decision making, the actions that needs to be decided, the next steps that needs to be decided, and a stronger communication is very, very much required here. So different forms of communication, a few of them, like we do face-to-face communication, wherein directly in front of each other people sit and talk. This could be customer versus a salesman's communication. This could also be an internal in the organization, like 2 peers communicating, or maybe a manager and his reportee communication, maybe an HR with you communication. Anything that happens face-to-face is one of the form. Phones, right? A lot of communication on today's day happens through phones, right? People connect to each other very quickly, and then a lot of things can be communicated there. Verbal is one form of communication. Written form of communication is anywhere there. Electronic form is also available. Communication by emails or web conferencing, these are all electronic forms of communications. Social networking services also have a different level of communication that works. Text messaging, as simple as to start with, an online website or an online chats. So there are different forms of communication available with us, for our business. It's very important for us to figure out what works good, and how do I pick which one is suiting to the requirement, and what is more easier for the customer, for the vendor, for the organization, and working towards it, building towards it is how is the key thing or the important thing in business communication. So there are four main forms of communication: written, verbal, non-verbal, and visual. Verbal includes speaking, sounds, and languages. Non-verbal includes body language, movement, facial expressions, and sign language. Non-verbal communication is much stronger and more pretty critical with verbal communication when things are happening face to face. The third form is written communications. It typically refers to letters, proposals, newsletters, different places where we write something. And visual is the fourth one, which refers to an ad, a film, a television, a graphic, a chart, or a slide, in fact, during our communications. Languages, how do you make this more effective, right? How do we reach to this effective level of communication is important. Effective business communication skills are vital to successful co-workers and customer interaction. How do we go about making our communication effective? A few things to learn there is both the speaker and the listener and the one who listens, right, shares equal responsibility, right, of making the message very clear. But effective communication goes far beyond simple speech and hearing, right? It is not just I speak and somebody listens and then it is done. The word effective means something which works, right? When we say communication, when it worked, when you got the result that is expected, is when you say the communication become effective. So both the speaker and the listeners share equal responsibility to make their communication effective. Body language, tone of voice, and word choices, messages, clarification, and communication style all comes into play and can make the difference between success and failure in an interpersonal transaction and interaction. As I was mentioning, body language and tone of voice plays a key role. Say when I have a nervous body language and I'm trying to pass a very positive message, it doesn't connect, right? People would just get confused on what things are happening. Now, how does we ensure effective speaking skills come up, right? Because this is one of the important part for effective communication. Speakers must learn to articulate their message in a way the listeners can understand, delivering it in a manner that is consistent with the message itself. As I was mentioning, when I say effective is something which works. So whenever you're communicating to whichever person, right, the message that you have, it should be articulated in such a way that the receiver actually understands it and acts accordingly. When this transaction happens successfully, you can call a communication which is effective. For improving speaking skills which you're talking about, it's important you to articulate in a right way. Serious issues are best delivered in a serious tone, but with regard to know or the potential reaction of the listener is pretty important. Right, we need to understand the tone. How are we using, right? A message which is more informative needs to be passed in a particular tone. A message which is more critical needs to be passed in a particular tone. The reaction of the listener to both good or bad news can be directly controlled by the speaker as long as the word choice and delivery are carefully considered. One part of effective speaking is knowing your listeners and how they may react, or delivering your message in a generic fashion if the listeners are not known. So it's very important when listeners, you are aware of, okay, these are my kind of people and these are the kind of understanding they have, or these are the kind of concerns they would have. The way you talk might be different from a very generic thing where people might take it in their own different ways. The second important factor here is active listening by both speakers and listeners. Both needs to be active listening, right? If anybody doesn't listen actively, then it doesn't really work. Active listening is practiced by both speakers and listeners in effective communication. Active listening on the listener's part involves eye contact, nods, gestures, and brief comments to show understanding. On the speaker's part, these gestures and comments are clues to the listener's reaction and comprehension. So the way the clue is passed by the listener, the speaker articulates his language accordingly, because that's how we would achieve towards making our communication more effective. If the listener seems confused, the speaker may reevaluate the wording, right, or delivering the same message in a very different language, different tone, or make it more simpler for the listener. So when you could observe that confused face, it helps you to work very well. And listeners must take it into account themselves to ask questions, validate what is being said, and provide inputs if necessary. Asking open-ended question is another important way of effective communication. Questions asked by both the speakers and listeners must be on an open-ended type. Those that cannot be answered by a simple word, like simple a yes or a no. Open-ended questions encourage further communication, dialogues and understanding, and can help all involved in the conversation to further investigate and clarify the message. As the word itself says open-ended, it opens up the discussion and a lot of communication can happen, a lot of message transfers can happen, and you would understand things much better. And this is one of the key things for making the communication most effective. Recognizing and deciphering body language is also important to make your communication effective. Recognizing and deciphering body language is both an art and a science actually. Eye movement and contact, stance, posture, facial expression, and other body language can sometimes give clues to the speaker and listeners alike. If the tone of the speaker is calm but the facial expression or the posture is tense, then message can be confusing. As I was mentioning earlier, it needs to match with your body language, the tone and the message that you are giving. If it is not matching, then this doesn't really work. Conversely, a listener who fudges, does not make eye contact, can give the speaker the impression that the listener is bored or not paying enough attention. These are the clues that you pick, and the speaker changes his language, tone, words, the way he connects. He needs to quickly pick up on the way and then communicate. That's when your communication can become effective. Choosing a right communication method, There's so many methods available right now. It's important for us to pick the right one. In the modern business world, people communicate by text, phone, email, written correspondence, verbal communication, a list we discussed a little while back, In effective communication, you must choose the communication method best suited for the message. Business people who are articulate speakers may not be articulate writers. So the message in email and a written correspondence can sometimes be misconstructed. The same goes for writers who can craft detailed communication in written form but choke when it comes to verbalizing. So you need to understand where is it that you are very good with, what is the mode that suits right to pass your message, to pass keeping your audience in mind, keeping your message in mind, keeping everything like your strengths and your comfort zone in mind. You need to pick what works for you. Learning to be equal, to use these things, with different forms of communication methods can be an easier task, can be effective, It makes your communication reaches the people, and then people understand the message and communicate back, It also helps you to know the limitations, It will understand, what medium really works for you, so that you work on it next time to ensure it works well. And at the same time, you need to keep in mind the medium should match the message that you are trying to pass. Effective communication in businesses, Communication happens when all parties are engaged in uncovering and understanding the meaning behind the words. It is not something that one person does alone, but when you as a business professional make your contribution to uncovering and understanding process, you should be looking for few things. Like your message should be very clear. It should be very clear to the point where people understand this is exactly what you are trying to say. It should be concise. When it is concise, it gets more clear, people understand it. You should have an objective. What is it that I want to pass the message and how do I do? And then there has to be a consistency, in the way you are passing a message. The most important part when we do an effective communication is your message has to be complete. Many a times we do this while communicating. We give partial information, and then we assume the other person is understanding that. But it's very important that we always pass our message in its entirety, in its complete form, so that people understand it, It should be relevant for the audience that you're talking about. And you need to understanding of audience knowledge. There's different times when people do not understand something, they cannot understand that kind of a language, that kind of vocabulary. You need to keep that in mind and help, So the 7 principles, which will help you. Call it as 7 pillars for business communication, or be clear, be concise, be objective, consistent, complete, relevant, and understanding of knowledge of your audience is important. Let's quickly understand about the AIDA tool that I was talking about in the beginning. AIDA is an acronym that stands for attention, interest, desire, and action. It is a model used in marketing that describes the steps of customer goes through in the process of purchasing a product. And the AIDA model has been in use since I think 19th century. It has been reviewed, modified multiple times over and over again, right? And then we still use it. When we say awareness, something is used to attract the reader. Like this AIDA, as I said, it's used much for the advertising or informing people on something. Awareness is a tool where you use it to create that awareness among the people, create that interest among the people, attention among the people, right? The second one says interest. Some information such as details, prices or availability is provided during this to create the interest on the product that you're advertising or you're talking about, or the message that you're talking about. D says desire. Something is used to make you desire the product. Maybe like in ads, you'd have seen a celebrity may appear in the ad commercial. The image and language of the ad commercial that suggest you the benefits of the product. These things, you see it and then it creates a desire in you to go for that kind of a product. The last one, A, stands for action. Something is done to urge, or something is done to act upon it, right? What is it, that quick thing that you could do to act upon it? So different things used, mediums used towards this. Say for example, when we say awareness, mostly social videos or display ads, your online PR, your presentations, webinars, these are all helps you to create that awareness. When I talk about interest, say articles about the particular message or a product, reviews, websites, social media, direct emails, brochures or e-marketing, kind of things will create that interest in them. For a desire, you might need to use a more personalized, where you send an e-brochure, case studies about something happens, blog posts help you to create that desire. And action comes when you go for that. Say, for example, an email, a subscription model, or a phone call. These are the kind of modes which help you for action. So that's how AIDA stands for: awareness, interest, desire, and action. As the model is based on these four things which we talk, how well it could be used. Like when I say attract attention, the product must attract the consumer's attention, right? It should be an eye catcher, as I was saying, the first A stands for. Say it could also be like a window design, which you see, like when you walk around the store, on the market, you see a window of a particular retail store and then you get attracted. That's how it works. It should be in a position to maintain interest. The first phase of the attention of the potential customer is picked up there, right? Their interest in the product or service should be aroused by looking at it. The detailed information on the product is presented, for example, the product description on the website or on the brochure, which will help you to do that. The third one, I was talking about the desire. Like how do you create a desire? If interest in the product is aroused, it is the seller's task to persuade the customer that they want to own this particular product. In the best case scenario, the advertisement or the product itself creates the desire to purchase. Action, as I was mentioning, as soon as the desire to buy aroused, there must be it must be transferred into an action. That's when the purchase will happen, right? Say for example, in case an online shop, this would ultimately be the shopping cart process, in which a customer is lead to a conversion. The customer can be encouraged to buy the products with call to action. Now, how does the AIDA used? AIDA model has shaped the views of marketing and sales strategies for over 100 years. The formula that we're talking about can still be found in current standard marketing textbooks that we studied during our MBAs. Beyond that, AIDA is also used in PR or to plan and analyze the effectiveness of PR campaigns, and still provide valuable information for the analysis of advertising messages. The benefits of the simple formula can be found in its simplicity and flexible application possibilities in the areas of other than store-based or stationary sales. In e-commerce, for example, the effectiveness of the product presentation in an online shop could be analyzed using the four aspects of the AIDA formula. So those are the few things how you ensure your business communication is at its best, and also the AIDA tool that we're talking about.